Alright, here's a history hot tip for you. A lot of people think that cavemen lived in caves. This is not quite true. The word caveman is just a nickname given to members of various species of early humans during the Stone Age, which lasted from roughly 3 million years ago to around 12,000 years ago. And while some of these early hominins did make use of caves as shelters, they didn't all live in caves. They would have been living in huts, tree houses, tents, whatever they could find or build to keep them out of the elements. I mean, there are plenty of examples of cave paintings from this period of time, but that doesn't necessarily mean they were living inside the caves themselves. It's more likely that they used the caves as kind of like an art studio, seeing as it was probably a nice dark place with smooth walls that were easy to paint on. You wouldn't want to paint on a bumpy surface. I mean, even modern-day artists today use caves as art studios because they're good places to make art. So it's very possible that our caveman ancestors did the same thing. Anyway, so yes, while they were making their cave paintings, what else were they up to? Well, we know from studying their skeletal remains that most of them were pretty short and stocky. By short and stocky, I mean they had short legs and torsos, but long arms. And this would suggest that they spent a lot of time climbing trees. Climbing trees would have been a necessity for them, since the forests would have been filled with predators. The high branches would have been a safe haven from dangerous beasts. And it's believed that many of them ate fruit from the trees. Maybe they were kind of like monkeys, except they also hunted. See, they were nomadic hunters and gatherers. That means they moved around a lot following the herds of animals and, well, hunting those animals for food. Now, you might be thinking, wow, it sounds like they had it rough, waking up early, hunting all day, gathering berries, having to worry about being eaten by saber-toothed tigers. Yeah, they probably didn't have it easy, but they also didn't have to deal with traffic, terrible music playing from your neighbor's car, killer bees, reality TV. We got it pretty good today. And if you think about it, the life of a caveman isn't all that different from the life of a modern-day lumberjack. Both jobs require you to spend long hours in the woods. In both jobs, it's very easy to lose track of time. And in both jobs, you'll often find yourself covered in sawdust. Just kidding. Cavemen weren't really exposed to much wood, since trees, don't grow in deserts. Oh wait, never mind. I guess they would have encountered wood depending on where they lived. But still, I think my little theory stands up. Imagine this. You're a caveman lumberjack. Your day starts at sunrise when you wake up in your treehouse home. After grooming yourself, preferably using a handy-dandy wooden toothbrush, you head down the ladder and into the forest. You grab your trusty axe and start chopping down trees. You work hard for hours until it's time for lunch. You sit on a log and enjoy a nice meal of smoked mastodon steak and berries picked by your wife. After lunch, you go back to work until sunset, when you head back home to eat dinner, maybe take a dip in the nearby river. Tell some jokes to your friends. Have some kids, sleep under the stars. Yeah, that sounds kind of cool. Now I know what you're thinking. You rethinking that there weren't any showers in the Stone Age, and therefore these people must have smelled terrible. Now that's a great question. I'm glad you asked it. And the answer is that they probably didn't smell all that bad. See, sweat isn't really smelly on its own. It only becomes smelly once it starts interacting with the millions of bacteria that live on your skin. These bacteria break down the chemicals in your sweat, and that creates that classic underarm aroma. Now, if you didn't shower regularly, let's say, and you started to sweat every day, then, yeah, you'd probably stink. But studies have found that most cavemen only really broke a sweat when they were working very hard, like when they were hunting or when they were fighting. And they weren't doing that every day. Also, I should mention that many scientists believe that cavemen wore loincloths, not just the loincloth, but sometimes animal skins. So if they were wearing clothes, then it's very unlikely that they reeked of stale sweat. But if the cavemen weren't spending all their time hunting and gathering, then what were they doing? Well, according to some experts, they were having parties. In 2018, researchers uncovered an ancient campsite in Spain that contained the oldest evidence of alcohol ever found. There were traces of tartaric acid found in some ceramic containers. Tartaric acid is the chemical that gives wine its sour taste. And this discovery suggests that our caveman ancestors were getting drunk at least 40,000 years earlier than previously thought. To be fair, though drinking fermented beverages made from wild plants wasn't unique to cavemen, scientists believe that apes also did it, so they weren't really the only ones. What else did cavemen do for fun? Well, surprisingly enough, they played games. One of the most popular games they played was a kind of checkers. Archaeologists have found checkerboards dating back to the Stone Age. The oldest one being from around 6000 BC, the pieces were usually stones or shells. But sometimes they were carved bones from animals that they hunted. As for the rules, no one knows. Since no copies of the rulebook have survived, we can only speculate how they played. But historians think that it was basically the same game as modern checkers. That makes sense since board games evolve slowly. I mean, think about Monopoly. How many changes do you think it went through before it reached its current form? Probably none. Monopoly was perfect from the start. Okay, that last part was a lie. Another game that cavemen liked to play was a kind of golf. Again, archaeologists have found some pretty solid evidence of this. For example, in Scotland, there's this place called the 17th Hole, which is a natural depression in the ground near a Neolithic settlement. Researchers believe that the residents of this settlement used to play a game of golf. They're using a stone ball. But unlike modern golf, which requires a lot of skill, cavemen golf was probably won by whoever threw the ball the farthest. I imagine that was pretty easy to determine a winner. I think by now you've realized that cavemen weren't as dim-witted as they're often portrayed. They weren't constantly fighting saber-toothed tigers or swinging from vines. They had their own unique culture, enjoyed their own unique hobbies. They were smart, social creatures who lived complex lives. In fact, some scholars argue that they were kind of like us. I mean, we live in modern Stone Age. We use primitive weapons, bows and arrows, and we routinely destroy the environment. So we're kind of like cavemen, except with slightly better hygiene and slightly better hair. Hey, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, I'd recommend checking out another one of our videos on something you might have done during the Stone Age. We made a video on the first humans, and that was really interesting. Or you could check out one of our other history videos. Anyway, hope you check it out.